Who is a narcissistic boss? What is it and what is inept? I maintain it is much safer to be feared than loved if you have to do without one of the two, said Niccolo Machiavelli. This is Ravi's story. Ravi is a senior IT professional at a pharmaceutical multinational who just rushed from one meeting to another because it's a normal day. Whenever he saw his boss, the director of his organization, walking towards him as if to talk to him, he recognized his boss's facial expressions as if in distress. With compressed lips, Ravi would move aside and vanish from the spot as if he would rather be invisible if given a chance. This way of dealing with his boss didn't work because Ravi's boss would still reach almost up to his neck. His face turned red, flushed with anger, and he started talking at the topmost volume possible and was always on the edge of being out of control. He would scream something like, "You never miss out on screwing up." He would literally scream. Ravi would never be able to understand what had flustered his boss and would run to do anything that was instructed to be done immediately without even understanding what had actually went wrong. His boss's words were the last word on the subject. Ravi literally felt a physical pain like being punched on his face, embarrassed with the eyes that peeped out of their cubicles, and later avoided eye contact from these people during lunch hours. Ravi had no idea about how to deal with the situation. He loved his job and earlier looked forward to being in office every day, which ended until the reign of Frankenstein. It was not Ravi's first encounter with his boss, and surely not the first time he was publicly humiliated by his boss. Angry and embarrassed about being confronted in public and including some people who were recently interviewed by Ravi and hardly knew Ravi, Ravi's steps would always be of cooling off himself and then approach his boss about what had happened. Frankenstein would behave like it is no big deal and would be back to being pleasant and charming for a few days. And then one day again, boom, he rises from the ashes. The hot and cold was very confusing for Ravi. His boss would suck up to other senior bosses in the organization and swooped all the credit of Ravi's team. Welcome to the world of narcissism at your office. The first thing Ravi said to me was, he hated his boss. This kind of behavior was having a devastating effect on Ravi's health. He couldn't turn off his mind from work, had difficulty falling asleep, and was putting on weight due to stress eating. The lowest and worst was when Ravi decided to take the high road with his boss and be an adult professional in dealing with him and others. Ravi's boss wasn't a normal, empathic person, but was narcissistic and completely closed off from feedback and hearing anyone else's advice. He started getting more angry about Ravi trying to talk about everything he used to do at work on a daily basis. Ravi was confused about why no one else saw his patterns, if there was any. Ravi wondered how someone like his boss would keep getting promoted every year, stepping over whoever came on his way. Ravi decided that this struggle and being miserable wasn't worth the effort and wanted to leave his job, whether he could find another job or not. Who is the narcissistic boss? The best definition is like Stewart's definition of obscenity. You know it when you see it. You will not start to hear my podcast if you don't have one. When you have worked in the corporate world for 10 years, you mostly have met one narcissistic boss. Sadly, it is very common. The person who works at the closest quarters of the narcissistic boss are the unhappiest population because their destruction is wide and deep as they keep pursuing their ego-driven campaigns in the organizations. If you have a narcissistic boss, more than definition, you need a plan. But first, let's be sure if your boss is a narcissistic person or merely garden variety bad. The survival of narcissistic bosses are often extreme steps, and hence differentiating is very important. Here is a checklist of behaviors that your boss would be showing consistently and regularly if he is a narcissistic person. He is unpleasantly overpowering. He does not care or consider about someone's feeling. Does not give a clear and definitive result or feedback. Is offensive and ill-mannered. He is careless, unreliable, obsessive, and wimpy. He is critical of all actions, mostly unavailable, very annoying, flatters you only when there is a personal gain, dim-witted, behaves silly and stupid at times, very abusive. He tries to micromanage all the functions of the work that are under your control, is very demanding, tyrannical without a question, verbally abusive, and very insecure. He belittles and is egomaniac or self-centered, is very unpredictable, and it looks like a bully. He has no moral sense of right or wrong, having or revealing an exaggerated sense of one's own abilities or importance. Look at how many boxes you have checked. If you have ticked in 80% of the total boxes, your boss is not like the bad boss of Ricky Gervais' TV series The Office, David Brent, who had a gaping blind spot, who thought he is effective but isn't effective. Bad bosses have low self-awareness, and mostly they can be addressed by giving the bad boss a feedback. With a narcissistic boss, there is no scope of feedback and no amount of diplomatic communication would get you through to him. In this situation, there is no win-win in which the team can strive for, because the narcissist only sees his or her half of the win-win concept. With a narcissistic boss, your survival mechanism is often only self-preservation. They would leave no stone unturned to be destructive and would use behaviors intentionally to serve their agenda, and would often cause immense harm to you and your co-workers mentally and physically. Toxic bosses are the ones who use destructive, often intentional behaviors to serve themselves and their own agenda, causing excessive harm to their subordinates and other co-workers. Narcissists spread their poison and rob people of their happiness and effectiveness. More on narcissism in my next podcast. Thank you.